Hi everyone, my name is David Copetti. In today's video, I wanted to share this script that allows you to take a set of contours and turn it into a mesh. This is going to be perfect for architects, engineers, or any students that have, let's say you have a set of curves or lines that makes up your site or even a survey or a GIS map. You can bring that information into Rhino. We can set those curves into here and extract at the end a mesh that looks like this. And so this we went through a few steps here to first create the original mesh and then to clean up the mesh and then smooth it out. So I'll be going over all of those steps. Let me know if you have any questions, and let's go ahead and jump right in. The only thing you're going to need is going to be just a set of curves, and those are going to be actually your topography lines. Typically you get this from a GIS map or a land surveyor. And so let's take this and let's bring it into Grasshopper. So what I'll do first is bring in a curve component, and this is going to allow us to bring in all of these lines into Grasshopper. So let's take this one, let's go to set multiple curves, and I'll select this, hit enter, and now I've brought in all of these curves into Grasshopper. Now what we need to do, now that we have these lines in here, is we need to take these lines and turn them into points. And that's because we can't actually turn this into a mesh because there's a bunch of lines. We need to subdivide these into smaller segments. So what I'll do is I'll actually just select these and show you what I'll be doing to the whole thing in just these segments here. So I'll right click on this and go to set multiple curves. And I'll just be working on this. So I'll hide those lines. And all I'll be doing is dividing this curve using points. Now I could technically explode it, but that would actually create too many points throughout that, and it would make it really difficult to turn this into a mesh. So what I'd like to do is start a slider starting at 2, going up to like 10, and this will determine the quality of our mesh. So I'll go ahead and plug that into our count, and as you can see, this gives us the ability to increase or decrease our points through those curves. So I'll turn this, I label this one set contours. This one, it's going to divide the curve, and this one is going to determine the quality of mesh. And this is actually going to be quality of mesh 1 because actually we have another set of points that we need to create later on down. So for now, let's just go to quality of mesh. And I like to group it together, and then you can recolor this to whatever you want and even make it a default. So now that we have these points here, let's go ahead and do that whole thing to everything here. So let's take all of these points or all of these lines. I'll select them all. I'll right click on this component and go to set multiple curves. Now notice that when I go to the front view, that the contours are stepped at 2 feet. And that's critical, obviously, to get the contour look here. So as you can see, we have all of these points. Now all we need to do is turn that into a mesh using a component called mesh triangulation Laune mesh. And then we could use that and plug in all of the points into this component. And as long as we flatten the input, it'll work. If you don't flatten it, the information is actually going to come out in groups. And so it's grafted, and here you have to flatten it for it to come in as just this one list of points. So far, it's pretty straightforward. Now I'll go ahead and disable the preview on all this. And if we hover over this mesh, it's normal for it not to be a valid mesh. And the reason for that is there's a lot of points that are actually intersecting. So the overall shape we're able to create, but the only thing is the mesh won't be working perfectly. So what we have to do is create another set of grid points here, and that set of grid points can then be projected onto this mesh to create a clean one. Okay, so at this point, I'll actually bring back the set of contours and hide all of the contours inside of Rhino. Next thing I'll do is get the outside edge of the mesh, and for that I'll use mesh edges, and I actually like to extract the outer edges, which are the naked edges. So let's go here to curve. We can plug this one in and we'll plug in that mesh. So what that'll do is give us this outside line, and that's going to give us the boundary of where we want to create that new set of grid. So let's take this line and project it down into the construction plane. So let's go to project, and we'll go project object onto plane. And I'll take this geometry and project it down to the coordinate system, which is just the X, Y, Z at the 0, 0. Next, what we'll do is take this polyline, and we're going to actually create a set of points throughout this. For that, we'll use a component called surface frames. And this will allow us to plug in our geometry into the surface. And actually, we need to join it first because these are separate. So let's go to join curves. We'll flatten the input, and we'll use that as our polyline. And the reason why it didn't work, like I said, is because it wasn't closed. As soon as we close it and we plug that into our curve, then it will project that down and it'll work for our surface frames. Now our surface frames we're going to turn into points because frames are technically just construction planes. So we'll plug this here, and now we can disable the preview on everything except for those points. Actually, I'll bring back the boundary. And as you can see now in the U and the V, we need to subdivide it further. Let's double click here, and I'll go to a slider. We'll just say 110. So I'll make the max number of points 200. We can decrease the density here. And as you can see, what we're going to do now is project these points into this mesh that does not work. And so what that'll do is create a new set of points, and then we can turn that into a mesh. So let's take these points and let's project them. So let's go to project. On this one, it's going to be different. It's going to say project point onto collection of shapes. We'll take all of these points, I'll flatten them, and I'll plug those into the point. Now the direction, it's going to go down, but we actually want it to go up. So let's go to unit Z. This is giving us a 0, 0, 1, which is up in the Z direction. And now let's plug in our geometry. Which is going to be our mesh. And as you can see now, we have a new set of points. And these set of points, we can create a brand new mesh that is clean and we don't have intersecting points. So let's do that again. Let's plug in these points into this one. Now, as you can see, the output, it says it is a valid mesh. And on this one, we can do a custom preview. This way we can see what it looks like with some color. So I'll bring in a custom preview, a color swatch, and I can change this. So if you have a set of contours from a surveyor, this is how you can plug those points into Grasshopper and just get a mesh. And you can also change the quality and the density according to some of these sliders. So right now it's at 83. If we set 10, you can see it makes it really low quality. If we said 100, it'll increase the quality using those points. So this will be mesh quality 2. And here's the thing, on this one, we can plug in the Z vector into the direction, or in the direction, we can literally go to set one vector, set expression, and or we can do many different things here where instead of having to put a direction, we can just do a 0, 0, positive 1. So for that, we'll go to Z and we'll plug that into the direction here. So we just plug this one in, but there's other ways to not have to have just a random component floating here. And now let's take our points and disable the preview and take a look at what it looks like. So as you can see, we can kind of work our way through here. And obviously we can have better quality of the mesh, but this is going to be perfect if you're trying to do like a render or you're trying to do landscape or something like that, or set your building inside of the site. This is one way of doing that. Now if we scoot back down here, let's play around with the quality, and the more points we create, go to 10, the higher the quality of the mesh, but also the heavier it's going to make your computer run. And same with this one. So right now we have it at 100. If we do 120, it'll also increase the quality at the expense of some computer processing. Cool. The last thing we can do is now take this mesh, and I'll preview it. And as you can see, it is, and I'll unplug this one. And let's take a look at the mesh edges. So let's go to mesh, edges. And this will give you an idea of what the topography looks like with the triangles. And you'll be able to see now a lot better when I increase the quality here using mesh quality 2. We have way more dense site here. What I'll actually do is bring this back down to like 80. And now I'll show you how to turn this into a super smooth mesh. There's different ways of doing it, and you do need a plugin for this. The plugin is called Weaverbird, and it's going to be this one. And what we want to do is bring in Weaverbird's loop subdivision. You can also use Catmull Clark, but I like to use this one to make it smooth. What I'll do is I'll go to plug in this mesh into this one. And now if I plug in that as the input, you'll see that it further subdivided it and smoothed it out. Now I want to be careful with this one, because if I increase the quality, right now the level is at 1. If I increase the level to 2, just by doing that, it doubles up. And I wouldn't even go to the 3rd level, as that would probably make my computer crash. So I'll delete this one and bring in our custom preview. And this is our mesh that we can now bake. I just baked this and I'm moving it over to the side, and I'll just disable the preview on some of this and take a look at what it looks like here in shaded mode. And I'll also, in my display preview, I'll make sure to turn on mesh wires so we can see what's going on. And then we can take this and create a section through it. So let's go ahead and go to clipping plane, vertical, and I'll just create a clipping plane here.